live stream on YouTube on this Tuesday night. I have every Tuesday and every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Eastern. And on Sundays, I've been talking about a book, Violets on the Window, about a young woman going into heaven. And on Tuesdays, lately, I've been talking about the officer and his journey into purgatory, a type of hell. And tonight will be very interesting. But before I start, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you can be told and be reminded that when I go live. You can go on my live YouTube streaming and you can ask questions and I'll answer them, and we will learn and discover Spiritism together. So let's get into the officer. Now, I talked about the officer before. Of course, J.S.M. Ward, the medium, has been talking to him so he can understand from a spirit's point of view what the life is like down in the lower zone, in the Portuguese they call it the umbral, and also the dark abyss. But of course, in this book, they call it hell, but it's really a type of purgatory since no one is in hell or in the dark abyss forever. It's not eternal. They may think it's eternal because that's the way the spirit world wants people to think. They think, because time doesn't move and they don't know there's an end to it, but there's always an end to anyone's sojourn into the dark abyss or purgatory. And it's up to them. It's up to them to change their character and their personality and to look up instead of down. Now, let's start. So before the officer started telling him about being at a medium's meeting, the mediums saw a vision of a vignette from the officer's life and what happened. So let me read this. So this is what J.S.M. Ward saw. He says, "I see clouds of smoke, a spot of light, large flashes of light, a blazing of it, absorbing the whole bottle." He was looking in a bottle of water. He saw this vision in the whole bottle. "Grass, miles of it, burned up grass, yellow and dry. Great mountains piled high above one the other in the far distance, and some of them crowned with snow. We are in a valley between steep mountains with a stream running down it. 3 men come riding up it, dressed in khaki. Soldiers. They are riding up a steep path on one side of the valley. The flash of a gun, a man drops. Another flash, and the horse of the second man drops. The rider of the wounded horse gets up and seizes the bridle of the horse of the wounded man. The third man, who is unwounded, turns and rides for his life, leaving the other 2 behind. The unwounded man who remains leans down and picks up the injured man, places him on the horse, which he has captured, and jumps up behind him. Heavy firing all the time. Heads appear, some with turbans." So I'll stop for a second. This must have taken place, right? Somewhere up in the Himalayas, in the passes there, probably around Pakistan, Afghanistan. Vision was done in 1914. Of course, the officer died earlier than that. So it's when India still controlled that whole area. So let me carry on. "So one of them hurls a great rock down the side of the hill. The soldier urges his horse forward, full gallop, and the rock passes behind him. Another rock rushes past just in front of the horse. More rocks come crashing down, but miss the fugitives. Firing continues. The path goes under the side of an overhanging rock, which shelters them, for the boulders leap clean over them and fall crashing in the valley below. They are out of range now, reach the valley in safety. Here the unwounded man meets the one who ran and hurls his revolver full in his face. The coward falls from his horse stunned. The man who rescued the wounded man is clearly visible. He is about 40 years old, a sallow face much lined, a mustache and dark hair. He has hard blue eyes and an unpleasant mouth and a rather hooked nose. He looks strong but hard and ruthless. He rides on and meets the detachments of troops coming up the valley. They help him to dismount, put the wounded man on a stretcher. Several officers shake hands with him. The troops advance rapidly. He goes with them. They sweep up the valley. A great cloud of dust blots them out. I can see them again. They are storming the hillside. Boulders are hurtling down the slope. Again, the dust blots them out. Once more can see them. They are much higher up. They are storming the crest. The hillsmen are blown down by the rifle fire and drop like rabbits. Again, a great cloud of dust covers the whole picture and blots it from view. Nothing but dust. The bottle of water begins to reappear. That is all. So that was the vision by the medium. And then on his next trance he had on February 10th, 1914, the officer told J.S.M. he goes, "You must not expect anything very pleasant as yet from me. You want the truth, and you shall have it. It is well that the world should know the truth, and not only the rosy side of it. I told you of the drinking den, and before I go on further, I better describe and explain what the vision you saw means." So first, let's say the drinking den. The drinking den we talked about last week, and that's when he died, and he kind of out of his body, and a friend of his says, "I've been waiting for you. Let's go drink." Of course, they didn't drink. They were just in a bar where physical humans were drinking, but the officer found that by absorbing himself into them, not completely, but kind of, into that human body, he could feel the effects of the drink. So then the officer goes on and goes, "Look, what you saw, it showed an incident in my early life. I rescued a man under fire when a cowardly skunk ran away. That was I. You hear nothing but bad about me. Still, I had a few sparks of better things. Now, to proceed with my story, I need not go through all of our life here, just as we went to a pub. We also went to a bad house. The great guide over lust is a spirit like a woman, but foul beyond compare. Loathsome in every way. I will not go into details, but as we could get a Dead Sea fruit satisfaction at the pub, so we can in the like manner satisfy almost all our lusts. Satisfy, did I say? No, just the reverse. That is our punishment. The craving for what we want but cannot really attain. Oh, the hell of it. For all the while we are helping to drag down others. Oh, what fools these mortals are. Do you suppose you can give rein to evil and not suffer and not make others suffer? I think you better rest for a while." So he rested for a while, and then the next day, the officer carried on. He goes, "After a while, I began to find that drink dens bored me a little. Then the dark spirit who acted as my guide said to me, 'Shall we go to a seance?' 'What for?' I inquired. 'Well, much fun can be derived from some of them,' he answered. He goes, 'Nothing else?' He goes, 'Yes, if you're not careful to maintain the supply of semi-material elements which form this body you wear here, you'll find yourself losing it and dropping down to hell.' He says, 'Am I not in hell now?' He goes, 'No, you're still on the earth plane. You'll quickly feel the difference if you were in hell, really hell.' So it's interesting. So what he said, if you don't maintain your body. Now, I don't think that's true because your body needs less energy. But I believe what his friend is in misinterpreting things. So right now they're on the lower zone. Now, what is the lower zone? Starts at the crust of the earth and goes up to the lowest level of heaven. Now, when he says if you're losing it, you'll drop down into hell. So I really think is what happens when people drop down in hell is they find themselves bored, or they find themselves even going further into depression, are exercising their quest for revenge, and then they'll go further and further down because the law of affinity takes you where you belong with other people. And then yet for people in the lower zone who try to keep associating themselves with people, they still feel some sort of affinity for the physical life, and that's why they are still there. So I believe that's there, but not as keeping the body going. So now he says, now his friends explains matters to me. He says, "I once went to a seance. I certainly could not account for everything I saw, but I put it down to fraud." And then his friend says, "Look, these seances fall into three main divisions, but often there is a good deal of overlapping. Number one, genuine ones where the medium is controlled by a good spirit." Let me stop there for a second. So yes, I have been to genuine meetings where there's a group of mediums in Spiritism. Now, I'm not a medium. They just let me sit against the wall. I'm not at the table, and I just listen in. But there'll be a group of meetings. They'll start the mediums meeting with a prayer, and then they will sit down, and then they'll wait for one of them to be approached by a spirit. And they'll have a trance medium, and then they'll have I believe it's called a counselor medium. I could be wrong on that name. And what happens is a trance medium will have a spirit start talking through them, and you'll actually hear the voice different, and you'll hear these things. And then the counselor medium will talk to the trance medium, actually will talk to the spirit in the trance meeting to help them solve whatever problem they have and help them start looking up to the light. Now, this was at a Spiritist center. So it's very important to know, and I always have questions like, what do you say when they say that, you should not talk to spirits? And that, the Protestant Catholic, religions say, no, you should not talk to spirits. And I always say, they have a great point, because communicating with spirits, if you don't know what you're doing, can be rather dangerous, because you don't know who you're letting into your house or to yourself. And that's why it's so important, if you wish to talk to spirits, is to study and get training. Now, it may not be possible in all situations, but at least you can study. There is the Medium's book by Allan Kardec. There are books on mediumship, the domains of mediumship, by Andre Luis, actually written by the medium Chico Xavier or Francisco C. Xavier. You can find that on Amazon, and you can find the Medium's book on PDF by Allan Kardec. And what that tells you is it tells you that there are different types of spirits, because after all, the Bible, people talk to spirits all the time, but they think they're okay because they talk to angels. Well, angels are spirits. They are just superior in their spirituality and their maturity. And of course, angels are us when we've studied and worked many, many years and got through many, many lives to become better and better spirits. So this is why it's important to be careful, because I've known people that try to talk to spirits, and then that spirit starts obsessing them and starts trying into that person's mind. And that one, you must be careful. And so then also in a Spiritist meeting, this takes place in a Spiritist center, or it could take place in a home. But what happens is it takes place on the same time and day every week. And that way, the good spirits know that they put barriers around that room, so they keep spirits out that they don't want in. And then the spirits who control the room, there will be a spirit manager there. He or she will control spirits that will let them into the room, and then they'll put them next to a medium so that they can start talking to the mediums. And the Spiritist meetings, medium meetings I went, they were there to help these spirits to talk and help them see what they were going on. In fact, at this meetings, there were ones where a person wasn't know they were dead, and they had to explain to them that no, they are dead, because it was a lot of spirits who are kind of ignorant and immature don't feel comfortable talking to these superior spirits. Just like a kid likes to talk better with another child. They feel more comfortable instead of talking with an adult. And I believe the same, and there's probably more to that than I'm thinking of, but that's kind of the same idea here. Another one got on, and this poor woman said that, here I am, my face is disfigured, my husband, attacked me with a hot iron and burned my whole face with a hot iron. And, I hate him. I can't get away from him. And then it was strange. And so this woman was complaining and crying through the poor medium, and the counselor was saying, please forgive him, get that out of your mind. And you could see, as happens to many spirits, and this is where you have to watch yourself when you're in the physical life, is she got that loop of hatred and revenge, and you really can't let yourself. That's why it's so important to forgive, right? As Jesus said, forgive 70 times 70, because then you just think about that, and then when you pass over, you're still in that quest for revenge. Then right after that, another spirit came on another medium, and he says, I am so sorry I did that to my wife. He goes, I know that's not right. I want her to forgive me. And during that time, it was like, a wife was the property of a husband, but I know that's not how I should be. And so it must have been probably sometime in the 19th century or so. So they've been in this personal hell together for too long, these poor two people. And of course, the husband is totally, asking for forgiveness, and I think that they were there for the wife could try to forgive him, because he was locked into her loop also, because he kept asking for forgiveness. So these are the things that you'll see in some mediums meeting. So that's where a genuine one, where a medium's controlled by a good spirit. And actually, the other thing I want to say is you should not do that by yourself. There should hopefully be several mediums there for you to first start. After you're trained and you know what to look for spirits, that's different. But it'd be good if you could be with other mediums. Then I'll go back. I said number 2, genuine cases where the medium is controlled by evil spirits like ourselves. So there are cases. That's why it's so important to know what kind of spirit you're talking to. And he says number 3 is fraud. So it goes, now, of course, we can't do anything with number 1 and number 3. That's useless. But number 2 is different. And often we succeed in leading astray a medium and converting her into number 2. So let me stop there again. There are many mediums who charge money. Now, in Spiritism, you'll never be charged going to a medium's meeting. And this is very important, because that is a gift from God that is there to help other people. In fact, I've been to many Spiritist centers, just regular meetings, and mediums, etc. I've never been charged anything, ever. So if you've gone to a medium and they say, oh, I want $300 or $400 for this, then what you should understand is this. They will not be talking to higher spirits. They'll be talking to lower spirits. Now, the difference between low spirits and high spirits are a lot, but let me go through a summary. High spirits will be able to see your past and future much more broader. The higher they are, the more they can see your past and your future. Lower spirits still can see future, only a lot less. They'll also do whatever they want with you. A high spirit won't tell you things like, oh, yes, you're going to find, well, they may, but very seldom. They're not going to say things like, oh, yeah, there's a gold bar in your backyard, or you lost your keys in this spot, right? Or, something like that. They'll usually talk to you in broader ways of getting you to study and be more mature with your spirituality, and try to give you good advice, like a friend does, but not too specific. And they'll also talk to you like a teacher who you admire, but wants you to do better. If you hear that, then you usually know it's genuine. A lower spirit, they'll try and use you somehow. So let's carry on. So then he goes, the officer said, well, what enables you to get control? And his spirit guide said, his not very good spirit guide, goes, if a medium uses her power for her own selfish ends, to advance our own fortunes, then we can get control. He goes, do you mean they may not take money? He goes, oh no, a medium, just like a parson, has to live. He goes, you don't think any worse of a parson, which he means like a reverend in the Church of England, because in time he gets a vicarage with £400 a year. A vicar may become a bishop at £3,000 a year, but he does not cease to be good priest necessarily by that fact. If, however, a parson, instead of trying to help his fellow man, devotes his whole time to getting on in position and fortune, you would at once say he was not a good priest. So, with mediums, it is the motive, and there is no deceiving us in that. Once the motive becomes low, then comes our chance. Now, this is where reading other things besides Spiritist literature, because this is a medium who's not a Spiritist, all shows you how much is true in Spiritist literature. Because in Spiritist literature, I heard the same thing in one of the books by Henri Louis, as psychographed by Chico Xavier, when bad spirits were talking about how they control humans on Earth. And what they do, they look for their motive. And when they find that motive, they make a feedback loop, a negative feedback loop, and like a good positive feedback loop when you're talking to your guardian angel. They make a negative feedback loop with themselves and maybe other spirits around them, saying, yes, you need more money, or if you hate someone, like, you should hate that person hates you should get revenge, right? Or you want a drink, you need a drink, and that's their motive. And they will replay your own thoughts and amplify them, so then you're motivated to want to do what they want you to do. And you really need to get your mind off of that. And he goes, and then the officer said, well, what good do we do ourselves, if we do this sort of work? He goes, well, first you gain material elements for this psychic body. Then again, you gain power. Power. Doesn't that word make you think? Isn't it splendid to be able to lead many people by the nose? Above all, and he was leering villainously when he said that, we can pay off old scores and even occasionally obtain a temporary incarnation. Now, isn't that worth striving for? Again, to walk to earth knowing all you've learned here, huh? I seized on the idea, and soon with a band of other spirits, we congregated in a room where a woman was sitting surrounded by a dozen men and women. Beside her stood a spirit of great light, the first I had seen, but he was sore beset by a mob of evil spirits. Again and again he hurled us back, but at length one evil spirit obtained control. Then a howl of delight rose from us all, and we rushed around her, began to form a complete ball of spirits round, above, and below her. What are we doing? I asked my evil guide. Because we are insulating her from the influence of her guardian angel. He cannot penetrate this wall of evil any more than we can penetrate the wall of good, which is around the best mediums. Now watch the spirit who has gone to work. Now, first, again, this ignorant spirit, I don't call him evil, is mistaken. If her guardian angel is there and didn't want those spirits to penetrate the wall of good, they wouldn't. The superiority of higher spirits over a smaller spirit is like an adult who's wrestling with a 5-year-old. There is no contest. And in fact, in some of the books, and I talk about this in my book, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, book 2, that higher spirit came down to one of these little cities and was talking to a group of people, and their leader came up to him and had his hand on the hilt of his sword. And the good spirit just touched the sword, and the spirit took his sword out, and it just limped over like a leaf. And there's no contest. If that good spirit decided he didn't want them around, they would not be around. Period. End of sentence. There is no contest. But what happened is that her guardian angel said, no, you've got to control yourself. Please think about this. And then the woman kept, in her mind, made her free will choice to talk to the lower spirits. The guardian angel always respect our free will. We have free will to make stupid, terrible choices. Amazing, is that's why this is why we're on a planet of atonement, because we made so many bad choices and bad decisions, and we all have to pay for our past wrongs. That's why we're here and not some superior place. So her guardian angel said, okay, that's your choice. And then, so really, these spirits didn't make a wall of evil. A good spirit could penetrate that anytime he or she wanted to, but he let her have the choice. So then I'll carry on. The medium began to speak. Turning to a middle-aged woman, she said, I am your sister, Sally, and proceeded to give her several pieces of evidence. He goes, how does he know all these facts? The officer asked. Easy enough. He's hung around this medium for years and learns all sorts of useful information. Now watch him. So then a man in the room spoke. Can you give me any useful information? I mean, something of practical value? And then the spirit says, I'll ask your brother George. And then assuming that character on goes, on financial matters, I wish to give you a useful hint, Henry. Come here and I'll whisper it in your ear. He gave him some advice on certain stocks that the man held, and the latter seemed pleased. You'll make a pile of money by that, the spirit added. Is that true? The officer inquired, goes, yes, it is, though often we give false advice to ruin our dupes. But remember that, you get false advice. But sometimes we give genuine information, either so as to lead them on, or else so as to keep them engrossed in earthly matters, and so prevent them from learning more important spiritual truths. So, again, they can give you good information, and it sounds nice, but a lot of it is all going to have to do with material matters, right? Are your desires that are of material desires, not spiritual desires. Your desires maybe to, your physical love for somebody or whatever. So if you see that, just understand. A higher spirit will tell you more of spiritual information. Now, this is a great example of someone giving financial matters, and it's also a great example of spirits able to see some of the future. So these things are real. Mediums are real. And a person being a medium isn't just an angel. You may think, well, she's got to be close to spirit. She's got to be a good person. That's not always true. And, I'm sure they try to think of themselves as good people, but they'll start taking bad advice if they need money and they need acceptance. So then the medium approached a young woman. Goes, I know what is in your mind, dear. Yes, accept him. He'll make you a good husband. Don't listen to the lies of which are told you about him. And he goes, and then the officer says, what's the object of that advice? Well, my guide replied, the man who asked her to marry him is a drunken beast and a blackguard. He'll drag her down and we shall get her. So this is like this example of really a horrible advice. So again, if you go to a medium and you say, should I marry that person or should I accept him? That could be bad advice and there are stories of this in other spiritualist literature, which I talk about in my books, that bad spirits, will make life miserable for young women and get them to commit suicide. So then when they commit suicide, they'll take them and use them as whatever they want to use them for. They'll be terrible to them. And it's horrible to read about that, but that is what happens. And this is a woman that they want her to marry this horrible, as they say, drunken beast, and he'll drag her down and he'll make her life miserable. Goes, now see this spirit. Goes, he was a jovial hooligan on earth. You'll see some fun. So the officer said, so sure enough, he wrote, a new control came and began to play all manner of tricks, some harmless, others distinctly malicious, but none quite so devilishly cunning as though of the other spirit. He moved things about and threw them across the room. He hit several persons sharp blows on the head and hid various objects. He even stole articles out of the sitters' pockets without their knowledge. Nearly all these things were done without any visible contact. Finally, he tipped up the table and upset half the audience. Then we departed. Now, again, that all sounds fantastic. How can spirits move things? Well, they can. It's not easy. They have to train themselves to do that. They've also talked that, even higher spirits, they don't do that. They don't, this is childishly things, and that's not what they take part in. They'll help people psychograph, they'll give people good advice, but they won't do parlor tricks. And if you're seeing parlor tricks, you're talking to, it may not be an evil spirit, but it's not a high spirit. It's not a spirit that wants to seriously lead you to a better life. It's a spirit that wants to have fun, and maybe worse than that. So then the officer's guide said, let me turn this off so I can do this. Okay. So then the officer's guide said, the beauty of these manifestations is that they are only a sort of proof that some materialistic beings will accept of the spirit power. Thus, many good mediums and controls have to exhibit them, and so we get our insidious messages accepted by the audience on the strength of them. After all, they wreck the medium and give us power, and often, incidentally, bring discredit on the seances generally. We don't like genuine good mediums in spiritualism generally. They teach and warn too much. So again, he is saying exactly what I've said. They teach and warn too much. And that's really when you're talking to a spirit, and as I said before, and they tell you in fact, let me give you an example. When I was given, I've gotten quite a few communications from mediums. They always tell me, okay, this is what you've done wrong, right, in the past, and now you have to work hard and, stay focused and do better. And I'm just paraphrasing, right? But this is what it's usually down. They say, okay, you're doing okay, but you got to do better. And I've been in meetings where at the end of the meeting, the lead medium will say, okay, I have a message from the from the spirit coordinator, and the spirit coordinator says, look, you all have to work harder. You're not working hard enough. So you'll be told by, just like you'll have a good boss at work who is fair and nice, but doesn't, will tell you, oh, no, you're not supposed to do that. Come on, you can do better than that. Or a good teacher, or a good professor. This is what you'll hear from mediums meeting. They're not going to be, oh, you're so wonderful. Everything you do is great. They're not going to flatter you excessively. Might say some good things you're doing, but then there's going to be but do this, right? If you're just hearing the flattering, then that should set alarms off. Don't trust that at all, because you're being set up for something. So then they say, it goes, then we went away, but soon returned. And in my next, I'll show the result. It goes, from the above, you'll doubtless see why I'm describing these seances. But there are other reasons. All that is put down is here for a reason. It's all planned out. And if you don't see at first the reason, why, be patient and you'll learn. So then the officer spoke. He says, I've been down to the very bottommost depth of hell, impelled largely by that intangible thing, a strong personality. Like a burning fire, it drives one on the path one has chosen. And for me, there was no hope until that path had been trod. So the officer understood himself. He understood that he had to go even lower down in order for him to make that change in his personality. Now, hopefully for most of us, we get that stimuli here on Earth. And that's where we're most vulnerable to that stimuli. But some people have to learn it in the depth of purgatory. The officer goes on. He goes, the personality made evil by an evil life remains evil after death. And the more probably it will go to the logical conclusion, which is evil deeds naturally set up. You say to know all is to forgive all. And he who has been to the bottom of hell may yet rise to the top. And the knowledge so required will be of far more value to himself and the world in general, and the lesser knowledge acquired by a feebler soul who did no great evil and very little good. So here's I'll stop there so I can have a comment. So here's a person that said they visited a medium, and must be her grandmother probably, and talked with her directly. So again, that's probably that was a good a good communication with the spirit, especially if your grandmother just said more uplifting spiritual things and gave you good advice. Then that is something that I'm sure was absolutely real, and it wasn't a figment of your imagination. And so people can communicate with their spirits via mediums and psychograph messages, and people have seen all sorts of these things. And I'll just read the message. I visited a medium. His grandmother came through. I talked with her directly, telepathically, and I could see her. Was amazed. She faced me, but had remained on the medium shoulder, which I thought interesting. Well, the reason she remained on the medium shoulder is she needed to be somewhat absorbed into that medium, because that's what happens. Just like I said before in the last thing about the bad spirit absorbing into the drunk, right? A spirit must kind of get themselves close to the medium, and sometimes absorb into their body. Sometimes they're like mechanical writing. A spirit will take over like their arm, or they'll take over their voice box. So the spirit will speak. The medium will speak as if a spirit spoke. So you'll see these things. So these things will happen, but that's why she stayed with that medium, is because in order for her to telepathically talk to you, she probably had to use the brain of the medium then to talk to your brain, because it has more of a similarity between two physical brains versus a spirit brain and your brain. She probably couldn't directly talk to your brain. You probably had not had the talent yet to talk to her directly, but she could probably do that by utilizing the medium's physical brain to then talk to your brain. Anyway, that is my opinion, but I just want to go there. That you asked that question is a great question. So as he was saying that, so again, which is very interesting, he says, he was saying he had to go down to the bottom because of his strong personality. And I can't tell you how many times I've read in spiritist literature where spirits will say, guys, and like this is this evil leader of a city or whatever. And he goes, that guy's going to be a good spirit someday because he's got a lot of focus and energy and he's got a strong personality. He just has to go for the good. So I think most people have had strong personalities. When we hear the story of the officer, we said, that could have been me. And I believe I am probably pretty sure that all of us here have been in the lower zone at the minimum, but in the depths of hell, most probably too. Because as humans, we're immature and stubborn, and we don't want to give up what we think we know is best. And therefore, sometimes we have to go through pretty harsh trials to learn what we need to learn, and that is love is better than hate, and serving is better than taking. I know that's not easy because that kind of goes against our current culture here, right? Our current culture is if you give and not get anything back in its place, you're a rube, right? You're not very smart. Well, actually, you are extremely smart, and you're trying to make your spiritual quotient higher. Okay. So then he says, well, being asked whether a soul could ever become annihilated by persistent refusal to repent, he said, it's obvious that a man could not be punished indefinitely for what he took place in a finite period. You mean, therefore, for faults committed after death, which is infinity? He goes, yes. He goes, what is the soul? And another spirit said, a part of God. And then the officer said, precisely. How then can God annihilate even a part of himself? Sooner or later, a soul will turn to God, but it may be countless ages before that happens. Now, again, the officer said exactly the truth, what we're told by Spiritism. Every spirit will, at some future date, turn towards God and decide that it's better to look up and become a better person than to continue to be proud and selfish and materialistic. Now, I've read of occasions where people who have stayed in purgatory, called the dark abyss, for over 10,000 years, which is kind of weird around the earth, right? Because we think that civilization's only been around, right, for 6,000 years, but it's not true. Spiritism tells us there's been Lemuria, Atlantis, and a couple other civilizations which they didn't name that have gone through. And so what happens with and again, you have to see this as we're on the campus called Earth, and they're going to take all of us through this campus. Now, we may go to different worlds back and forth, but we're all going through this campus. We all have to get better together. Now, the ones who refuse to get better, they'll be sent to other planets. But eventually, some percentage of us will make it to a planet of regeneration. So what happens is this, and you can look at the Roman Empire for this as a smaller subset example. If a civilization becomes, and probably the Aztec Empire too, becomes just completely materialistic and not very good, right? Because the Romans had slavery. They tried to take over what they could. They were very, they just wanted money and power. The Aztecs, human sacrifice. Again, they were not a nice empire. So what happens is they're destroyed. And not only that, what the spirits have also said, what I've read, is if a man gets too technologically advanced without being spiritually advanced, they'll collapse an empire because they're not ready to handle that technology. And in fact, the spirit Emmanuel said in Atlantis, they even knew how to handle radio waves and other things like that. They were pretty advanced, and then they were just taken down. I don't know how long ago this, 40, 50,000 years ago, according to what I've read by, Edgar Casey. Now, he's not a spiritist, but I kind of thought, let's see what he says about Atlantis. There's a whole book his son wrote about that. And so it's very interesting. So, who knows? Some of us could have been Atlanteans or Lemurians, and we're still here learning very slowly. It's probably me. I'm a slow learner. That's why I'm here on the planet of atonement. So let me carry on. I think we're almost done here as far as this story. Yes. So that is what I have done so far in the author now start more about his journey into hell itself. But just to let you know, I talk about the lower zone. I talk about heaven in my book, Heaven and Below, book 1 of Spiritism, the spirit world revealed to an Anglican vicar. And it has information all about heaven, the lower zone, and also I have a whole section on Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is so interesting. He's so much more than we know about Jesus, right? People think he was this wonderful human being, this carpenter that was full of love in the face of complete adversity. Well, he's also the CEO and the chairman of the board of our planet and other planets, 4 other planets besides. He is not the highest spirit. There are other spirits above him, but he's on a par with other spirits who control other planets, and he controls the destiny of our planet. In fact, he was part of a group of spirits that actually helped mold and create our planet. Again, this gives you a clue of why we're here being trained, and sometimes really tough, right? Because we go through a lot of trials and tribulations and painful suffering times. And those pain and suffering, those are stimulus to get us to change our character and our attitude. So respond to those, right? Change your character and attitude, and things will get much better. If you want to make your next life better, do well in this life. That's the clue. But it shows you if Jesus Christ and the company of pure spirits helped shape our solar system, helped shape our planet, the moon, guided the evolution of life on Earth. Yes, evolution is, as what our own scientists and Darwin said, does take place, but it is guided by subtle changes in DNA and other things. Just as when we are born, let me give you an instance of subtle changes in DNA. If you're going to be a surgeon or, important doctor is going to help people, when you are born, other spirits will go around and they will subtly change your DNA to make your hands steadier, right? Give you more calmness under fire. They'll give you more attributes to help other people on Earth. Now, when you understand how we are, let's call it what it is, manipulated on Earth, and you have to think of us people on Earth like we're a big chessboard. And, each piece has its power. And when a piece falls off the board, it's not off the board. If they want to change the culture of a nation, they will put pieces with a certain attributes and inclinations and flood that in important positions into a nation to get that nation to go in the direction they wish to go. And that's how that works, right? I am sure. And then Emmanuel in the book On the Way to the Light said, look, and this was written 1939. He said, there's a war that will be starting in Europe. World War I was there. World War II will happen. And the purpose it's to destroy the power of Europe. They have done enough. They've colonized the world. They treated people terribly. And power is going to be taken from them. And that's how this works. That's why, just, talking about the present time when we have all this identitarian and, rancor against other cultures or things like this, it's all unimportant. I know it's important to many people now, but when you think about the spirit world and the process is we can be different sexes, we can be different cultures, we can be different races, and even that, right? So the people who were the worst slave owners of yesteryear, right? Usually what happens is they then be born in the lowest level, and everything comes around. So you should not be mad at anyone because you're probably, you're just as bad at that. I mean, I think about like politicians I don't like who I think are corrupt. Well, I've been told in Spiritist meetings that I was a corrupt leader and I cared more about money than I cared about the people under me. So I can still that's terrible they're doing that, but I can't hate them because I was an idiot too, right? I did the wrong thing. So that's how we should look at it. And as the spirits tell us, it goes, look, your culture, your race, your form of government, it's all going to go away. That's all unimportant. You should think as politics, as important as you thought of politics when you were in high school and people were running through the student body president, which to me, it was like, I never paid attention. It was just a joke to me. And it's the way one should look at politics. Now, I'm not saying try to go with whoever you think is best and try the nicest and, help economically and socially, that what you think should be done. And remember, everything should be done through nonviolence and respect everybody. Just because people think something different doesn't mean they're evil or they're your enemy. So anyway, just wanted to go off on that tangent for a minute, because once you get yourself and you think about Spiritism and you think that you're an immortal soul, then you know full well that you love your country, you love your house, you love your car, well, and you love the earth, let's say, that's all going to be gone someday. The sun will go out and you'll be moved to other planets or other galaxies or other spiritual universes. Everything in this physical plane is all transitory. The only thing that is immortal that you'll keep, the reason you're here on earth, is changing your personality and your character for the better. That's all that's important, and for you to help yourself and others at the same time. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. Again, please remember, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like button. And every Sunday and Tuesdays, I will live stream on YouTube. You can ask the questions. I love people asking questions. I will answer them when I get to a logical point to answer those questions. And at some time, if I start getting more and more people, I'll just do a AMA. Ask me anything about Spiritism, and I will start doing that too. So I'll be happy to help anyone on their quest for their spirituality. And then also I want to say is I have a lot of audiobooks. The book I'm showing up here on the screen now, Heaven and Below, it's on audio, Kindle, and paperback. But I'm also doing an audiobook on the Spirits book. Let me show that. And that is I'm posting that on YouTube, and I have a playlist called The Spirits Book. I'm posting chapter by chapter on my site, nwspiritism.com. You can look on the right-hand side, and it'll take you to a page where I'm going to post by the book, an audio book. And I've gotten book 1 done. I should be finishing book 2 in a couple of weeks. And you can download that in audiobook format. So then you can go to the chapter you want. It will save your place, right? You can put it on iTunes, right, to read your books. And so I've invested and done all that. And then, let me put that in here. So yes. So I just want to make sure that here's Miss Amil. So I'm enjoying the Spirits book. It's amazing. And yes, it is amazing. And that's why I know some people like audiobooks. And this is the first book you should read. It's the Spirits book's in PDF. Of course, you can buy it on Amazon too. It's not expensive. It's been in public domain for more than 100 years. So it is amazing. It tells you so many things. And in fact, I read it over and over and over again. And now when I'm doing the audiobook, I'm still learning more things about the Spirits book. And so I'm about the spirit world. There's so much information on all the messages and communications we get through spiritist mediums. Let me talk about that for a second. So Spiritism started with Allan Kardec. He's called the codifier of Spiritism. And what Allan Kardec did is he posted a set of 1,019 questions. And then he didn't codify the answer in his Spirits book unless he had similar answers to the same questions he gave to different mediums throughout Europe, but mostly around Paris, because that's where he was based. In fact, there's a great movie on Netflix called Kardec. So please, if you have Netflix, look up Kardec, Kardec. You'll find his story. So, and then he started, Spiritism grew and grew. And so there's other spiritist mediums. Leon Denis, Chico Xavier has written more than, actually now it's more than 500 books, psychographed 500 books. Yvonne Pereira, Devaldo Franco, who's still alive, and G. Val Owen, who I talk a lot about in my books too. All this information, the people who are spiritist mediums will have communication to them from higher spirits. So, and what Spiritism tells us is we will continually get more information as we are ready technologically and culturally. And so this is why when people talk about the Bible, say, oh, there's a lot of terrible things in the Bible. Old Testament, Old Testament, to paraphrase, go to that town and kill everybody in it. Don't let anybody live or you're going to be punished, right? Sounds terrible, doesn't it? But you have to think that's who they had to talk to, those immature human souls at that time. That's the level they were at. They had to be given directives. Jesus Christ came at a time where people could be taught with a little bit more maturity, but not still openly, right? Spiritism tells us that you can be reincarnated as a man or a woman, and that marriage is between two souls. Well, if Jesus said that, they would have just said, we're not listening to you. You're an idiot. There's no way, right? So they weren't ready for that. So that's why so many things that Jesus said is in parable, and you really have to dive to get information. Whereas the Spirits book, it's really telling you many things. And then as more spiritualist literature is telling you more and more. And that's why I've written my books, is to really go through and tell you what I can about the spirit world, which I think is important for people to understand. And so that's why, my goal is in my books, and when I said heaven below and those three things, is to really kind of give you, this is the spirit process, this is the organization, and then you can motivate yourself. Now, in my book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism, is a little bit different. In that book, I take a poem by Andre Luis, it's 24 stanzas, and he's kind of going on, very short, like just 5-6 words. And he says things like, help others, learn to trust God, things like that. If I don't have it right. But then I say, okay, what does this mean? What do the spirits mean by this? And then how do you get there? So that's kind of more of how to really increase your spiritual quotient. Because, look, we all have to make a living. We all have to work, all of that. But we should also devote part of our time to improve ourselves spiritually. So, and thank you, Raphael. I'm hoping that I can help as many as I can. And please, thank you for your comments. I just hope that all of you get excited, because to me, it's so exciting reading about the spirit world and knowing that, what's great about being a spiritist is that you can dream on your next life, right? In this life, I'm old, I'm retired, but that doesn't stop me. I've got plans. I have plans for my next life. My wife and I are always talking about our plans for our next life, right? And I keep telling her, I don't want you to, don't be born where you were born before. It's too hot there. Be born somewhere else, right? So we have these great conversations because, our life is just one small spot in time. Anyway, well, thank you again. And I want to say God bless to everyone, and keep in there studying. God bless you.